Hello and welcome to your Wednesday night offering of the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped, and him over there, the editor of Scotland Rugby News, the one and the only Gavin Harper. Hello, sir.
How you doing, Bruce?
I am fabulous. Can't smile wide enough, big fella. Can't smile wide enough. It is all happening. And I don't even know where to start. So let's go to Las Vegas and talk about the Hampden Roar. Big news.
Big news, yeah. In the pipeline, I think, for a wee while.
I got a whisper of it from an inside source, and I have to admit I didn't particularly believe it because I thought it was quite a big, bold move. But I think that's maybe where both franchises are. I think we're at the point of we need a big, bold move, and this is big and bold.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is big. It certainly is bold. Look, there's been plenty negative reaction, certainly on our social media channels. And
in Scottish rugby, there's been negative. Just shut the front door.
Who would have believed it?
Who would have believed it?
But having been to Hampden, on enough occasions, I think, to be able to comment, it is a nightmare to park. It is a nightmare to get to and from. The view when you're actually in the stadium can be a bit dodgy. But do you know what? Where else is there? The pitch at Ibrox is too small. Celtic Park is has been a non-starter. So therefore, if you want to keep the game in Glasgow, it has to be Hampden. And I think that big and bold is 100% right. That if Glasgow are going to make a statement about not being at Scotstoun, it's a massive jump to go from a 7,000 or 8,000 to 52,000. And fill in it seems unlikely at this stage, but if you get the same crowd as were at the Edinburgh leg last year, it was 38,000. You get a pretty good atmosphere inside Hampden. Look,
I don't know how they're going to do it, right? Because they're not going to fill it, right? They're not going to fill it. I think that's there for all to see because they're not being able to fill Murrayfield. But is there a chance where, talking about growing the audience and yada, yada, and I know these things cost money, but are they able to go to all the kind of community clubs and schools that have schools of rugby and cashback funding and go, right, there's the problem is, though, if you just throw 50 kid tickets, they need somebody to take them. And at that time of year, I'm not sure you're getting many school teachers, certainly, but clubs maybe will, but you're then looking at, right, will parents make the effort at that time of year to take their bairn because they got a free ticket? But imagine if you were to add, and this is being absolutely supersonic out of this universe, 10,000 folk with free tickets. Now that could cause bother with the folk that have paid, but imagine engaging 10,000 folk in Glasgow in the sport of rugby at Hampden for what is our showpiece club game, and add that to the 30, and all of a sudden you've got 45,000 folk maybe watching a game of rugby in a club game in Scotland. That would be mental, but great.
Whoever said that Mr. Happiness is egg-shaped was a perennial optimist, eh?
Aye, I know. But there's some of the chat I've read, I kind of understand. Wrong time of year, and personally, I think it's the wrong time of year no matter what. I would love it to be the first game of the season and last game of the season, so that folk could come with short sleeve and hopefully a bit of sunshine and maybe something riding on it. And that's my own personal opinion. I think the back pitch at Murrayfield then looks magic. You could have folk. Here's one for you that I would like is you pay for a screening on the big screens at the Hive for what's going on in the big bowl.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually.
They've had the picnic on the pitch, so you're saying, right, it's 15 quid, and you can bring your own beer. That might be dangerous and probably not allowed to, but you get access to some of the back pitch, concession stands and all that kind of thing. But you can go and watch it on the big screens, and you create an atmosphere on the Hive. £15 to go, 500 folk in there, 28,000 folk, 38,000 folk in there. It's just another way of being big and bold. Anyway, we're getting off the Hampden. Glasgow were going for it though, weren't they? They were. Everybody, even Pump Manson was in the photos. They're bringing out the heavy artillery for the promotion of this one.
But you know what? I think if there's a time that they're going to go for it, it has to be now. The URC champions, and I think to go back to your point about the Hive and that kind of stuff, I think it has to be a show. I think if you're talking about a new audience, and we've spoken about this before in relation to the women's game, I think we get far too drawn in to doing things a certain way because it's IB. And I think if you're looking at attracting, yes, we want all the Glasgow fans to turn up. Anybody that goes to Scotstoun or has been to Scotstoun, get a ticket. Brilliant. But if you want people who've never been before, who maybe are new to rugby, they have to try little things and market it in different ways. Let's be honest, we've all sat in stadiums at times when long TMO referrals can be really, really confusing. And, I would like to think we both know enough about the game that we kind of have an idea of if that's your first time at a rugby game, you'd be saying, well, this is just like football. I don't understand anything that's going on. So somebody's going to, whether it's, making ref decisions or some kind of PA announcement, which sounds right up the Edinburgh announcer.
Imagine if you had an announcer that loved talking and could explain what's going on.
Unbelievable. You might just get a running commentary, to be fair. But it has to be more than the 80 minutes inside, and that, I think I always am drawn to Hampden not having great amounts of space around that it can put on extra stuff. And I think that's maybe one of the things Glasgow really need to cleverly look at. I'm also really interested in how Glasgow go about marketing the game, what they do with, like concessions tickets you mentioned, how they engage.
It's one of those ones. Do you try and get 50,000 folk at a tenner? Or do you settle for 35,000 folk at whatever it is, 25 quid? Or, I don't know. And I'm certainly no financial director that has any clue about that stuff. But selfishly, I would rather there was 50,000 folk there paying a tenner and 10,000 folk there that had been given a freebie and you had 60,000 folk watching it. I mean, you see the stuff going on with Leinster and Munster. I would love to be there. Big mate of mine, big handsome Sean's going, and I'm massively jealous. I'd love to go and see that. What an atmosphere! And Hampden's a tough sell. Listen, I'm a Hibs fan. My memories of Hampden are pretty grim. I've had 2 nice days at Hampden, and I've been probably 15 times, and I've had one of them was actually life changing. But I went to the Scotland women's football against England women's football.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't many folk there. And they were all on the main stand side and sort of round behind the goals. And we were behind the goals, and you're a million miles away. So there's no point in cheering or shouting encouragement, because it's going to take 3 weeks for the sound to get there. That's tough. So I don't know if they didn't have folk behind the goal and they go main stand and opposite, or how they configure it. But
yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I remember the Australia game in 2004. I was there, and we sat behind the goal, and I remember Scotland, of course, were behind their own post at one stage, and I remember thinking, you are miles away, even from the nearest set of posts. You could genuinely hardly see what was going on at the far end. So, look, I think
I remember the Hampden have an in-play big screen.
Not normally. So that's just one of the points I was going to make. It'll be really interesting. They do have big screens at either end.
Yeah.
But they normally just act as kind of scoreboards.
But they're also, you can't, if you're up the back of one, you can't see the one that's above you, and the far end's like covering a 12-inch TV.
So there are logistical problems that Glasgow and the URC will need to work out. But look, certainly the idea of playing the 2 games over 2 weekends at the 2 national stadiums, I think, to me, makes sense. I like the idea of it being the sort of double header before the Six Nations. It's like the old-fashioned sort of probables against the possibles, the trial game, isn't it?
they'll have been on the phone to ScotRail to put extra buses on, extra trains on. Sorry, because I think folk will go. Like, I want to go for the novelty value. Like, I wouldn't. I've only been to one, I think, at Scotstoun, Edinburgh game, because it sells out and the time of year.
No, you're right.
But there's a chance of me getting a ticket because it's rammed. There's enough space. Getting there Sunday before Christmas, like, that might put folk off. But I hope it's going to motivate folk to go. Listen, how good would this be just to see? It might never happen again. Who knows? So to have been there, to say I've been there and seen it.
I think Edinburgh Rugby have an important role to play in this from a marketing it on their own point of view. Like,
let's make it our own home game. Let's make it an Edinburgh home game. Get loads of folk.
I would like to think that Edinburgh are sticking buses on and taking, supporters clubs or whatever through on 10 quid, 15 quid for a bus there and back. And you get plenty of Edinburgh fans, and you actually make it, and that's probably the one thing that the 1872 Cup has lacked that like Leinster-Munster doesn't, is that, like, real rivalry. I think earlier, in an early podcast, I said that it's hard to generate that rivalry when they both come under the same umbrella. Well, Leinster and Munster manage it, so why can't Edinburgh and Glasgow?
Yeah, I've got views on that, but
don't we all?
Well, for us though, and we've spoken about this before, Glasgow is Edinburgh fans' second team, and Edinburgh, although apart from that clown that was on Twitter on Sunday, I've still not worked out how to deal with him. He's got under my skin.
Just ignore and block.
Well, his 12 followers might not be happy. Anyway, Edinburgh, I think, for most Glasgow supporters, is their second team. So the rivalry's tough, but I think they're beginning to get there. The longer Edinburgh and Glasgow are entities, the more that is going to become a rivalry. And we've now got generations of supporters who haven't known anything else other than Edinburgh and Glasgow. So that will probably play a part in it. It has to be a good game. So you're then thinking that time of year, I hope the weather's you just want the stars to align, because otherwise all the weary willies are saying, told you it was a nightmare to get to, told you the queues for the beer would be too long, told you the pitch was too far away, told you it was no screens, the told yous will go nuts. But if we can get to that before the Six Nations, one or two folks stick their hand up and go, actually, I'm your man at 13. If we had Darcy and Duhan against Kyle and Kyle, you've got Adam Hastings against Ben Healy, Ross Thompson. You've got Jordan at 12, or you got Sione at 12 against his brother. You've got Matt Scott saying, "Hey, I'm still here." There's front rows. You could, if you picked your two Scotland front rows against each other. It's not possibles and probables. It's a Glasgow against Edinburgh. At the moment, if you're picking a team tomorrow, it would be a possibles against probables. Hopefully, by the time we get to December, there's a few more sort of question marks around position. I think it's class. Like, when I heard it, I was like, that would be exciting, but I'll believe it when I see it. Mm-hmm. And then when Scotland Rugby News broke the story, I thought, yeah, here we go. This is cool.
I don't know that we can take the complete credit for that. I think it first appeared, Andy Burke at the BBC. I think just had it slightly, but look, it's
that's because it took time to come along the dial-up network along the M8. Burke's all over that stuff in Las Vegas.
Aye, that's right. No, look, it's a really exciting prospect, and I think that I hope it works. And I hope that it's not a one-off. I think that's the other thing. I really hope that this becomes like, can Glasgow feasibly... that's the other thing. Like, Glasgow supporters are saying, oh, it's a nightmare to get to. Okay, well, I want Glasgow to come up with solutions to that. I want buses from Scotstoun.
Because Scotstoun's a dream to get to. And there's plenty parking around Scotstoun.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a ticket at Scotstoun.
I once was at Scotstoun and there's a school round the corner. And I was late getting finished, and my car was locked in the school. And I
So you did a Dukes of Hazzard over the chain fence.
No, in a word, I managed to find the last steward who had to phone somebody, and he came back with his. But basically, if I hadn't collared the steward, my car would have been in there till Monday, till the school was back open. It was a Friday night game.
Excuse me, miss. There's a big ginger guy sleeping in a car in the car park.
I don't imagine that would have gone down overly well.
No, I think it's cool. And Edinburgh, one of the things I thought was quite interesting on social media, Edinburgh shared, I think, a Glasgow post, and Scottish Rugby have shared posts. So rather than doing it off their own sort of back and their own pages, there's a sort of collaborative approach, it seems like, around this whole thing. And again, one of the other bumps and moans, and this is the same at Edinburgh and has been for years, we're giving away our home advantage. Yeah, you're right, but unfortunately pennies are too important at the moment. But if Edinburgh were able to take through even the capacity of the Hive, if they were to take through 7,800 folk, all of a sudden you've got a fighting chance. And it'll be brilliant to see how Glasgow embrace it. I mean, Glasgow's a city, not as a club. And if it was to go well, do the board at Celtic go, right, hang on, there's a payday here, maybe we should invite them back into us? Although some folk that were at the European the final a few years ago might not want to go back. I think some of them are still queuing for a beer. Or Ibrox say, what can we do to make this happen? It would be interesting. There's a wee bit of FOMO amongst the Ugly Sisters in Glasgow.
Ugly Sisters. No, look, you're right. You're right that I just hope the whole thing is a success. I think there's a real chance that it generates a bit of chat, a bit of noise about rugby in a city where obviously that is second fiddle massively to the two football teams. So no, I think it's a good move. I think as we said at the very, very top, it's a brave move. It's a pretty bold statement from Glasgow to say, actually, because you could make an argument that they say, right, we're going to take it to a football club ground within the Glasgow Caledonian kind of region, and it's 15,000. That's feasible, and they would fill that. But actually to say, no, we're going to Hampden, it's the two national stadiums, the two consecutive weekends, let's get 40,000 at both games.
It's Kevin Costner. Build it and they will come. That's the way to go.
Exactly.
Class. No, I think it's exciting, and there's enough run up to it. There's whatever there is, 2.5 months to try and get folk on board and willing to go. And it would be good if there's some folk in Glasgow who are saying, right, what else are we going to do on a Sunday? It means I didn't have to go shopping, or I didn't have to go and visit. Oh no, I've got tickets for the rugby. And I would imagine the hospitality offering at Hampden, will be bigger. They'll be able to get more folk in. Maybe more Edinburgh supporters are able to go to the hospitality that otherwise there wouldn't be room for at Scotstoun. So there's plenty of opportunities there, no doubt. Big Al's all over it. Listen, it's been a tough old week on Walton's Mountain down at EH12, isn't it? I feel for all of them, players, coaches, supporters. Everybody needs to get back on the horse. And I hate this bit because everybody's having to make the right noises. And it's either going to be, see, we told you, or, yeah, talk's cheap.
Yeah, this is it. Look, I think Edinburgh clearly aren't in the position that they want to be in after 3 games. I think this is where you find out, they could have come unstuck in a half like that and have won against the Bulls or Leinster and be able to fire back at the likes of me asking questions. Yeah, and they would be able to say, well, actually, we showed a bit of grit and determination in this game, but they haven't done that so far, and they're not from 3. They play a former URC champion at the weekend. If you go not from 4, it's you're starting to panic. They've got Cardiff next, I think, next weekend at home, who, were appalling very sudden, not on the same scale as Edinburgh, but were dreadful for a half against Glasgow, and looked like a completely different team in the second half. All of a sudden, that becomes like an absolutely massive game. So, look, we spoke to Sean yesterday, and he was kind of pretty determined that the players had taken ownership of the defeat. He was saying that, if there was no accountability, there would be a problem, but the players have taken accountability. I think what Edinburgh fans, from reading sort of comments on social media and speaking to a few people, I think what Edinburgh fans want to see is actions. So we have to, everybody has to expect that on Saturday night.
It's largely the same folk are going to have to make it better, though. There's not 10 players in the wings ready to come in and go, right, my turn. Leinster unleash RG Sneeman on Saturday, and that the whole thing winds me up, especially when one of their hashtags is we grow our own or something. Give me strength. But anyway, they bring in RG Sneeman. We've not got that. The injury list they published, I'm absolutely gutted for Mark Bennett. He's annoyed somebody in a previous life. His injuries are, you wouldn't wish it on anybody. So I'm gutted for Benzo, and I hope he rehabs and gets back at some point soon. But, Tuipulotu, I think, is going to play a lot of games this year, and Gregor probably wants him to anyway. I
think that's a prime example. The guy played, I think, 12 minutes of the Super Rugby season, and he's come over here largely on the back of Sione's name. Folk are saying, well, this guy's going to be the great kind of midfield saviour for Edinburgh. And, Paddy Harrison came on at the weekend, and Sean told us yesterday that he'll start on Saturday night.
Wow.
But you think, well, there's another guy who's only played 38 minutes, and they're surrounded by so much experience. I had a quick look earlier. That Edinburgh team that played on Saturday had more than 1,000 Edinburgh appearances. And when you take into account Mossese's got 1, Paul Hill's got 2 or 3, you're looking at guys like Gilchrist, 200 appearances, Hamish Watson, 150 plus, Ritchie and Bradbury, 100 plus, Schumann, 100 plus. Like, the worry for me is that so many of these guys are internationals and experienced players who've been there, done it, and got the T-shirt, that collectively and individually they weren't able to say, right, lads, stop. Like, we keep kicking them the ball, they keep running rings around us. I can't, there's part of me, and I can't fathom why, and I get that they were under pressure, I get it was at altitude, I get it was ridiculously hot, but they're professional rugby players, and I don't want to go back to our emergency pod on Sunday of just ranting and raving, but it really worries me that they weren't able to sort it, and we've seen that, a kind of worrying trend. I always think back to Rome when Scotland were cruising, and then the wheels just fell off, and
there was a 14-point turnaround, no try at that end, concede at that end.
And you look at the team and think, become a bit worried that some of the same players aren't learning this kind of very basic lesson that when a game goes away from you, you maybe have to just, it's like the Man United thing at the minute. Eric Ten Hag's obviously getting an absolute pasting from the media down south. And a load of former players keep saying, well, for 10 minutes, in games when they're struggling, why don't they just tighten up and become hard to beat? And I think Edinburgh are too easy to play against.
Yeah, I kind of get what you mean. There's also people saying Man United have had a lot of managers with the same group of players, and there's not been a reaction. The Paddy Harrison one really interests me because as a coach, you're quite often faced with, I've got a young, hungry, inexperienced player, and I've got an experienced, seasoned campaigner that's been here before, so isn't he going to be phased? And a lot of the time you go with the seasoned campaigner that's been there before. And Paddy came on, and we said this on Sunday, and I love Paddy. I think he's a great kid. I think things have probably happened quicker than anybody expected for him, but you're not going to turn it down. You eat it up. I think the summer was great for him. He's come back. I bumped into him. I didn't bump into him because that would have been sore, but I saw him just before the first pre-season game, and I thought, whoa, as a physical specimen, you've matured a wee bit in the last sort of 4 or 5 months since I last saw you. But he came on, he was growling, he was celebrating his try as he should, because just because you're getting pumped, it doesn't mean you can't personally have a bit of, yeah, let's go. And I just loved that. And he brought so much energy, and they could have been staring at an 80-pointer. Like, let's not make any bones about it. And I know people are saying, oh, the second half didn't matter. And I get that too, but it would have mattered if they'd been thumped by 80, because the conversation would have been even more severe. So they did dig, and people like Paddy came on and made an impact. And I think that had as much of a knock-on effect to his teammates as an older player getting them behind the posts and saying, right, lads, here's what to do. Paddy Harrison was action. I doubt he got folk round in a huddle and dispensed wisdom. He just went, right, give me the ball. I'm hungry for this. I'm in the defensive line really quick. I'm going to dictate the line speed. He did stuff that, as a coach, you're probably analysing it and going, that's why he's in, because I know Sean places a lot of stock on effort. And Paddy Harrison's effort rating on Saturday in the however many minutes he played, 50 minutes, would be pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think also Edinburgh maybe about to be plunged into a 1 week crisis at hooker where the options are slim. I think Dave Cherry's ankles touch and go at this stage of the week. I think Ewan Ashman, Sean told us yesterday, Ewan Ashman failed his HIA, so he won't be available, which means they could be Paddy Harrison starter and Harry Morris off the bench to play, the Stormers, who've got however many Springboks in their team. And look, it's going to be a fair old challenge for the two of them if that is the case. But
Paddy's ready. Paddy wants that. He's now good to go.
And you
throw
talked
him a
about
bone and let him go.
You talked about you can't just kind of throw in. Edinburgh don't have 10 players to throw in, but they do have Paddy Harrison, who added impact off the bench, Luke Crosby, who's a leader who played for the A-team last weekend. And wee tweaks like that might make the difference. I think I would expect Sean to make at least one change at halfback. I felt like Edinburgh's control there Edinburgh had no control in the first half. They were absolutely all over the place. So I think when you read between the lines, people have said that comes down to game managers and 9s and 10s. I think we could probably expect a new face in one of, or if not both those positions. But I think, look, a game like Saturday was kind of tailor-made for somebody like Buffelli. If they're talking about, Sean said after the game that his kick strategy was put the ball in the stand, do not let the Lions go quick. If you had Buffelli's boot at 15, I think Edinburgh would have felt a lot more comfortable. That's not to say Wes Houston hasn't done a good job there. He had a great season last season and is obviously a good player. It just maybe wasn't the game or the condition but their options aren't massive there with Harry Patterson kind of finding his way back. So it is going to be largely the same squad, and but they're going to have to sort it out, because another performance like that is just, it ultimately might cost somebody like Sean his job.
Oh, Gilco's hurting. I know he's determined. I would imagine, I've not been in touch with Jamie, but I'd imagine he's seething and ready to have a crack. Pierre will not want to have sort of 3 South African teams on the bounce. That's the kind of thing that no doubt there will be chirping up front. Paul Hill, I think, will be probably valuable in these situations. Experienced campaigner, as you said last week. VP leaving is a tough one, but Hilly seems like pretty switched on guy, decent energy. Paddy next to him, pretty good in between Pierre and Hilly. I would suggest for Paddy, second row.
Yeah, if you're coming into a team as somebody like, I'm not saying, Paddy Harrison's been about for a wee while now and he's got his own experiences, but if you're coming into a team to have a guy with 30 odd Scotland caps on one side and a guy who's in caps for England and just won the Premiership on the other side, Grant Gilchrist, who's played like 300 and odds professional games, you kind of know you should be in a reasonable spot. But look, Edinburgh have got the upshot before we kind of move on. I think Edinburgh have got to sort themselves out this weekend.
Well, it has to be a win. I don't think anything else is.
It's interesting. I asked this yesterday: does the performance matter? Because if they win 6-0 and they play terribly, do folk care? What do you think?
Well, we're talking about Scottish rugby supporters here. Of course they care, because they'll not be happy if they've not got something to moan about. So, but at the moment, a 6-0 win works for everybody, I think, because better winning ugly than not winning at all. Sean made a comment about scoring 5 tries, but we still lost the game. So, but Solly was, we'll win 6-0 every week, and I'll take that. It was all about winning, and we had views on that one. But I think they have to win. Right? They have to, whether it's by a point or 40, they have to win, and that will make everybody leave going, we didn't play well, but at least we won, and that's the. And that, the league table is pretty ugly reading at the moment if you're an Edinburgh supporter. So a win all of a sudden leapfrogs probably 3 or 4 teams, which is all you can do. You can just control that. You go to Cardiff, we play Cardiff. It's 2 home games on the bounce, which might also make folk feel a bit happier. Although Edinburgh will feel like an absolute village if things didn't go right on Saturday. I'll be like, I'll just get a Tesco home delivery this week. No, I hope, I'll be there, you'll be there. I've been trying to drum up a bit of support and see if we can get the flags back at the Hive and create a bit of a buzz. The announcer will be quite excited, I think, because it'll be another Saturday night out for him. Although I'm going to miss Strictly again. I've been having to watch it on iPlayer.
Talking of the iPlayer, the announcer will surely have one eye on the Scotland women's game while he's announcing certainly the first half at the Hive.
How good would that be if they could get a result? Well, there's a classic. Didn't they play well but won? And if Evie Gallagher hadn't got that turnover in that maul, it could have been a really different conversation this week. But you're better saying, well, we didn't play well but we won, going into the Wallaroos, who are looking all right. They're looking decent. English coach, probably knows quite a lot of the Scottish players.
Yeah.
Which will, I don't know if it'll give an extra dimension, but, knowledge is power. So she might be able to tap into, I know that about that player, and maybe we can do this. I don't know what team Burnley's going to pick. There'll be, that's not true. I think we largely know probably 11 positions of the squad. I think Emma Orr likely comes back in at 13. What happens on the wing between Rona and Karine is probably a bit of a decision. Does Tomo start or does Merrill start at 12? I would think it's Nelly. I think it'll be Katie at 9 with Brebner holding to come on, I think, which means Mary McDonald misses out, which is tough on her. Front row picks itself, I think, in Burnley's eyes. Second row, I think, probably picks itself. Back row, Rachel Evie, probably.
Again, probably harsh on Alex Stewart, because then you look at, talk about Australia's physicality. You probably want Jade Conkle on the bench. So then you start weighing up
6-2 bench.
6-2 bench with Merrill on the bench. So that means Tomo starts and Merrill covers 12, 13, 10 and 15.
I think Merrill starts. I'm not sure she goes from what she's done. She was player of the match last week at 13.
Yes, no, you're right.
So I'm not convinced Merrill starts, and I think Tomo possibly misses it, although back to that experience, Tomo's been there, her kicking's been decent. She seems like she's happy to take that on. I'm trying to work out what's happened to Rona because she kicked it twice on Saturday. I've known her since she was 11. I think I've seen her kick the ball once in that time, and she kicked it twice on Saturday. So,
but that shows the development of the players, doesn't it? You know, that shows that.
I think it was the game plan. I think it was keep it as far away from our own goal line as possible, and we'll put pressure on Japan. I think that seemed to be part of the game plan, because the first one that Rona kicked, she had space to run and she didn't. Yeah. So she was, I think, doing as she was told. Alex Stewart's a really tough call, because I think her journey has been incredible in the last not even 12 months. But Rachel, I think, are the flankers, and I think Evie is at the moment the 8 because she's so explosive off the back.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. I think you could talk about if you thought you were going to get complete dominance up front, you could talk about shifting Evie to the side and bringing Jade in at 8. I think that you probably want that dynamism, a wee bit more explosiveness off the base. I think I'm interested. You said the second row picks itself. Is that Bonner and McMillan or Bonner and McIntosh?
I think it's Bonner and McIntosh.
I probably agree with that. With McMillan off the bench,
Louise also gives a bit of flexibility. Jade kinda gives a bit of flexibility. Evie across the back row, certainly. I think you go the front row. I'm not sure if Ellie Clark. I'm not sure who's second choice there, but Hooker and Loosehead, I think, is clear. You're then looking at probably Louise and Jade, which maybe means Alex misses out. Scrum half, Brebner holding, possibly Tomo, and then I'm not sure. Does Rona get a bench spot if he brings back in Karine? I mean, that I think Karine and Rona is probably one of the biggest calls he's going to have to make.
Yeah, and I think it gives you that team gives you enough that you've got cover just about, without needing to go 6-2 or anything kind of rash. Brian's not done that too often, so
the only reason for 6-2 would be, does Alex Stewart? Do I need her in the 23?
Yeah, does Alex?
Other than that, it's a 5-3 split. Yeah. There's a lot of flexibility in the backs because Nelly can play 10 and 12. Meryl can play where she wants. I'd give her a shot at hooker if she told me she wanted to play hooker. Meryl can do what she wants. Tomo, 12-13 at a push, could play at 10. The back three, Chloe and Meryl, I think, are the only 15s.
Yeah. Lucia Scott obviously would be in that contention if she was in the squad, but
yeah. I think, but maybe Lucia. I don't know if it becomes that last bench spot between Rona and Lucia, or Karine and Lucia. I'm not sure what the call is there, because if Meryl's there, she would go to 15 before Karine and Rona, but Lucia could go to 15 straight away.
Similarly, would you? I think in a game of this magnitude, I wonder, would Brian go if Lucia was on the bench, say with Lisa Thompson, but Meryl was on the field? I feel like he would put Lisa on and move Meryl before he would throw Lucia straight in. So then do you say, well, actually, I want a winger. I'll pick one of the wingers on the bench, because if we need somebody to come on and completely change a game, we know that, for example, Rona Lloyd has done that at the national level.
She can go the length. It's brilliant, because it wasn't that long ago, probably Six Nations before this one, where you could have picked 1 to 15 and probably 2 of the bench, and it wasn't that long ago where Brian wasn't using his bench.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
And now we're at a point where Chloe probably stays on for 80 now, because Meryl's in the centre, and he's taken Meryl off and put Lisa on. Emma Orr stays on for 80. The wingers potentially do, or can. All three of them are 80-minute players. Nelly, I think, is probably an 80-minute player. Scrum half will change.
Yeah, again, you look at that and say, well, actually, they've developed a dynamic where you could take the 10 off. If you need to completely change the game, you could throw Merrill into 10 and put Lisa Thompson at 12 and bring somebody like Rona on the wing and actually just say, right, and Brendan Holden comes on and all of a sudden you're going for it, and that has completely changed the dynamic of the team. And I don't think Scotland are really...
Half your week with the starting lineup and half your week with Brebner, Holden, Merrill, Tomo, Emma, Rona, Fran. I think Fran's the stick on. Fran seems like she's made... I think Fran's the first choice winger. And the decision is between Karine and Rona and Chloe. I think, there was a little while there where it was like, right, how do you get Merrill in the team? Right, let's play her at 15. But actually, Chloe... she loves to score tries. Chloe's going to play most of the time. I think Sarah Bonner's work rate's ridiculous.
I think, you're absolutely right. And I think by the time we're obviously recording this on Wednesday afternoon, by the time this comes out, Wednesday evening, we'll not have long to wait till Brian names his team tomorrow lunchtime. So there'll be plenty for us to debate. I just hope that they deliver a performance that is kind of fitting for the game that they're in. I think to win back-to-back titles, considering where this team has been, would be a really good achievement, and I think it would give them the confidence they would need to go into Six Nations and then the World Cup. And actually say, well, we're here to compete, not just we're here.
Yeah, I want to announce that they've won WXV, and looking at the Six Nations, their next games, Ireland are now going, hang on a minute, we can take the Black Ferns. England were ridiculous the other night. I think their back three scored 7 tries.
I think that's right, yeah.
I think Jess Breach got 3, Kildun got 2, and Dow got 2.
Yeah.
And then you've got Emily Scarrett, and I mean the depth that they've got is just off the hook. And Abby Ward, I mean, what a legend! Just her story is so good. Hannah Botterman, 50 caps, and then they sub their whole 1, 2, 3, and on comes 16, 17, 18, and you're going, they could probably have started that whole. They're all good enough. They're not there to make up the number. It's ridiculous. And John Mitchell looks like he's loving it, and they love him.
Yeah, I think that was a kind of eyebrow raiser at the time. Because
it was for me. I slagged that off. Hands up, I slagged that off. I couldn't believe that appointment. And Jo Yapp's now away to Australia. Potentially she's the next coach. I don't know how long Mitch has got left. If it's a World Cup, I'll win that, and then chips and him way back to Hamilton.
I think anybody who was saying, I'm not sure about this, you included, has to eat a bit of humble pie, because it has 100% worked on both sides.
No stranger at a pie, big chap. No stranger at a pie.
And then I suppose we've only got 3 weeks between the end of WXV and the start of the men's Autumn Nation series. So the everlasting rugby season just rolls on.
Which means there's even more for me and you to slaver rubbish about.
I don't know that it's. I would describe it as slavering rubbish, but we certainly will fill an hour or so during the week.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I'm a bit gutted with the kickoff time of 5:15, because it means we will be sort of picking up the WXV stuff on on social media or that. But I'm also sad that it's in South Africa. I don't know if Scotland's got it in them. I don't know how the bidding process works, but I know the gig is up this year. Mm-hmm. Imagine hosting WXV, but actually we didn't want WXV 2 because we want them to be in WXV 1.
And by 2026, you want Scotland to be competing in WXV 1. And
that's what I mean. So we didn't want to host the second tier because we want to see them in front of us. What an opportunity to grow the game that would be by bringing England, Black Ferns, Ireland, potentially, America, Canada, potentially by then, Australia, who knows, France. It's competitive. It would be unreal.
To be the realist to that, you have to then say is that likely because 2025 will be World Cup down south? You know, is it then likely that they're going to share another tournament with England or Scotland, or you know? So it might take a bit of doing, but yeah, it would be a really good thing, I think, because even if it was in Cardiff or Belfast, Dublin.
It's a crap time of year though, because URC season's up and running, football season's up and running. The availability of the stadium is
this is it.
It's maybe a challenge, but
you're probably looking at somewhere like the Hive that's a designated rugby stadium. But again, you would have to work around URC scheduling, and
you could jump into the big bowl.
The old plastic pitch comes in handy. Yeah. The big bowl's not a bad shout.
Yeah, I'll go to Hampden. I've heard it's got rugby on it now.
Well, let's see how we got on with our first foray at Hampden in 20 years.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I lived in Hong Kong at the time, so I missed that bad boy. So I'll be there. I'll be able to tell you. I saw Hibs win the Scottish Cup, big fella. I saw Hibs win the League Cup. I was there with my inflatable banana in the days. And I remember my old man saying, when I played for Gala just out of school, and we won the Border League, and Neil Crooks, legend, he said to me, as we're waiting in the line to go up and get our medals, and he tapped me on the shoulder and went, "It's not always like this." Because he'd been waiting for about his whole career to win the Border League, and I'm just out of school and I'm getting a Border League medal playing 6 games while Mossy was away playing for Scotland or doing whatever he was doing. And then I remember in 1991 when we won the League Cup, and my dad saying, as a Hibs fan, "It's not always like this, son." And he was wrong. He was wrong. 2016, we did it again. We won the Scottish Cup. It's like, what you want about that?
What was the first year? 91 and 2016.
They were.
You only had a couple of years to wait, right enough.
I've seen Hibs win at Hampden. Yeah. Well, anyway, big chap. Great to see you. We can read all about it. £12 for 12 months. It's great stuff, and there's more coming. And there's probably going to be a few things to talk about after the weekend. Hopefully, no Sunday morning emergency pods though, because.
Not good for anybody's caffeine intake at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
I need my beauty sleep. Beauty sleep.
You and me both.
Yeah. It's like Shrek and his twin brother. Right. Cheers, pal. Good to see you. Scotland Rugby News podcast signing off. I was Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shape. Gav Harper from Scotland Rugby News. See you all very, very soon. Cheers.